Hi, this is Ryan Dodson with SurvivalSullivan.com. Today I want to talk about gear, specifically items that, as you're new to survival or to prepping, items that you can focus on that are going to be most important if you end up in a survival situation. There's a lot of choices obviously out there, and you can spend a lot of time and spend a lot of money, so hopefully we can narrow it down a little bit for you and help you with that process. Now, the first and the most important item that you're going to want to look at purchasing is going to be a good, reliable knife. And there are plenty of nice folding blade knives out there. I just don't suggest that you rely on one. If you want one as a backup, that's fine, but there's just too many things that can go wrong. The joint can fail. It can not lock in place. You really want to have a fixed blade knife as your primary tool. And you also want it to be a full-tang knife to where one piece of steel extends the entire blade all the way down through the handle. That's going to give you something that's going to be stronger and it's not going to break on you. Now, ideally, you want to have one that's high carbon steel because that's going to allow you to use this with a ferro rod to start fires if you need to. This particular knife has a curved blade to it with a gut hook. It's more intended for hunting. I have several fixed blade knives that are full-tang that I use for my different survival challenges. I do 4 or 5 per year. So it just depends on the circumstances which one I take with me. But, I always have one of these with me. And all of these items are items that I use on my survival challenges on a regular basis. You also want to make sure that it has a good thick sheath. You want it to be something that's the blade's not going to poke through, it's not going to rip through, so it's going to last for you, and so you can keep it on your belt and keep it handy, because this is the tool that you're probably going to use the most often in a survival situation. The next item that I want to talk about is a survival bracelet, and more specifically Paracord. Paracord is a cordage that is typically 550, which means it's designed to hold 550 pounds of weight or take 550 pounds of pressure. Okay. Keep in mind that if you're falling at any speed whatsoever, that increases the amount of pressure. So don't think that just because you're less than 550 pounds that it's going to hold your weight necessarily. But there's several interior strands in each piece of paracord. And so what you can do with paracord is split it open and use each of these strands for cordage for building shelters or whatever the case may be. Or you can keep it intact and use it for holding more weight if you need to. Now, a survival bracelet like this is woven with paracord, and when you unravel all this, I've got about 50 foot of cordage just in this little bracelet. Cordage is going to be incredibly important in a survival situation. It really saves a lot of time so you don't have to go out and try and make cordage, so it's nice to have that available. Now, this particular bracelet has a few other features that I like. It has a compass built in, which, you can find your direction without a compass, but it's always nice to have a backup, especially if it's cloudy outside. It also has a ferro rod built into it with a striker, so I can start a fire with this if, say, I lose my ferro rod. And it also has a survival whistle, so I can signal for rescue from a distance. This is a sound that's going to stick out from anything in nature, so if I need to get a hold of somebody, get their attention, I have that. So this is something I always keep on me. Now, next is a good tactical flashlight. Now, any more of these tactical flashlights are really nice. They typically make them out of some kind of metal, so they're not going to break on you. They're going to last a long time. Most of them are LED, which is going to give you a really strong beam, and this one in particular is adjustable, so I can change the width of that beam if I need to. You can also set it on a strobe setting, which is nice for self-defense, so you can disorient your attacker and get away if you need to. It's waterproof, it's cold-proof, it's heat-proof. I mean, it just will survive through anything. So a good flashlight is definitely something you want to look at purchasing. Next, I'm going to look at iodine tablets. This is an inexpensive water purification solution that everybody should have. It costs $7 for a whole little bottle of these. You can stick them in any pocket, and you drop a couple of these in a bottle or a pot of water, let it sit for 30 minutes, it's safe to drink. So it's definitely worth having this with you no matter what the circumstances. It's just so convenient to have, and I like to keep it as a backup. It's not my favorite way of purifying water, but there have been times where my other ways of purifying water have failed, and this has definitely saved me from getting sick. So it's a good idea to have that. Continue talking about water purification. My favorite way to purify water is this water bottle. If I had a steel version of this where I had a metal bottle, that would be nice, but this still works just fine. And the reason I like it so much is because I can dip this in a stream or a pond, I can fill it up with water, and then I can drink out of this with a filter built into the lid as often as I need to as I walk. It's got a lanyard with additional paracord here with a carabiner on the end so I can clip it on my belt. And, this just gives me clean, purified water without having to get down on the ground and drink out of a stream like if I had a straw-style filter. I don't have to wait 30 minutes like I do with the iodine tablets. So this is one of my favorite ways to purify water, and it works really well. When it comes to fire, I always like to keep a Ferro Rod or a striker with me at all times. This one has magnesium built in here with a chunk. I rarely use that. Typically I can find other tinder that's going to be better to start a fire than the magnesium itself, but it does give you something that's nice to hold on to as you're starting your fire, and this will last over and over and over, producing sparks at a very high temperature so you can start fires whenever you need to. It also works when wet, so that's going to beat any lighters or matches that you might bring with you. Only costs a few dollars. Now, I do like to have a way to process wood, whether it be for firewood or for shelters. This hatchet works really well, and one of the things that I like best about it is that this particular hatchet actually has a saw built into the handle. So I have a choice of how I want to process my wood, whether I want to swing a hatchet or I want a saw. Sometimes I'll do both, just depending on how worn out I am. But really works well for getting through whatever wood that you need to. And I like it better than trying to use a knife or trying to use a full-size axe. It really does the job well. Last but not least, a good emergency blanket is something you should always have with you. This one is thick tarp style. It has fibrous material here, so it's not going to tear, it's not going to break. It has a reflective side to it, so it's going to reflect heat back to you just like any emergency blanket would, a space blanket, that type of thing. But this actually has grommets built into it, and it's thick enough you can use this for a shelter, and it's saved my rear end more than once. So those are the items that I would focus on primarily. If you add all this up, it's probably less than $100 for all of these items, and that covers your main pillars of survival, which is food, water, fire, and shelter. This gives you all the means that you need to get through those particular concerns if you're in a survival situation. So I appreciate you watching. This is Ryan Dotson with SurvivalSullivan.com, and I will catch you next time.